There have always been a lot of theories surrounding the origin of the Tyranids, but what if I told you we finally have confirmation on where they came from? And it's so much worse than you could imagine.
Mixed together with the most important ingredient of all, 4 heaping pounds of freshly ground plankton? I warned you.
Hi, I'm Chrono the Harlequin, and welcome back to Live from the Black Library, where today I want to talk to you about a lore update that a lot of people seem to have missed, but was brought to my attention on Twitter regarding the origin of the Tyranids. And given that you have read the title of this video, I'm willing to bet that you already know this one's gonna be a doozy. But before we get into that, I would just like to say thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe if you have not already done so, and I'm gonna be honest here, Warhammer is not doing well on YouTube at the moment, and it hasn't been for a few months now, but I just got my first monetization check for this channel after 2 years of hard work, and so many videos that made it past like 100,000, and it's kind of eating me alive, so if any of you could support me on Patreon or anything, it would really mean a lot. And in that vein, I would also really appreciate it if you could join my Discord server. That way we can keep in touch, I can hang out with you guys, and moreover, you can keep updated on all my projects, both current and in the future. But without further ado, let's get into the origin of the Tyranids. So up until this point, the origin of the Tyranids was what I would call unknown but understood. Basically, we understood that they were a primordial ancient race that was dormant in the space between galaxies, and was awoken when the Pharos device exploded during the horusheresy after Barabbas D'Antioch detonated it to stop it from falling into the Night Lord's hands. And then, 10,000 years later, they would arrive in the Milky Way galaxy to wreak havoc, with the tendrils of the larger Hive Fleet heading up from below the galactic plane and through it in small pockets here and there, slowly spreading across the galaxy, causing major damage and disruption. And while many like the Eldari tend to refer to them as the Great Devourer, the Imperium of Man would come to know them after their attack and devastation of the oceanic world of Tyran, giving them their name, Tyranid. So while we don't know the origins of the Tyranids, I think we know enough. It makes them menacing and mysterious and gets us to wonder just how long they've been out there, and how many galaxies must have fallen prey to them over the long millennia. And it does something that I always really like, make the setting of Warhammer feel larger and more lived in without giving away and over-explaining too much. However, in issue 540 of White Dwarf, we would get this. Analysis of signation between Her Imperial Grace Lord Inquisitor Draxus and Xenos contact Upsilon. As on previous occasions, contact Upsilon's manifests upon the surface of the Palaka Salver after keeping my lord waiting beyond the appointed hour. Psychospectral analysis commencing on the rhomboid echo patterning haloing the Eldari Prophet Witch. My lord sullies her tongue with an Eldari greeting to smooth the way. The usual disgust flashes over Upsilon's faceless mask. Cease these pointless overtures, Kyria. Your mangled grunting is insulting. Then let us begin. What have you got for me? Contact Upsilon appears to scan the cell's psychic wards, which frustratingly provide no impediment, and briefly looks directly into the hidden vid recorder. Every twitch scatters the Xenos' misted outline. I'm waiting. I have a story. A dream about a lord of the soulless ones. Let us say, the Lord. He was a figment of my imagination last time. Yes, and look where my answer led you. Your translator paid a price for your boldness. My lord had picked up a faint warp echo as we entered the system with Sister Nika. Now we know what it was, or rather who, keeping tabs on us it seems. Regardless, behold, there was once a lord harboring such lust for power that evil itself coalesced around him, into fell beings that were mirror shades of his ambition. His timeless hate was driven into everything he encountered, even his own people. Yet, it was in life's light that his enmity truly blossomed. Not content with driving it from his own kingdom, he sought to excise life from the wider world. In secret, he moved beyond the horizons of the world for an age, and there he bred horrors of infinite hunger. Finally, pleased with their form, he showed them the shining light of the world and unleashed them upon it, where they moved from kingdom to kingdom, devouring everything. Bereft of life, his own kingdom is safe, and he laughs while others weep in grief. What do you expect me to do with this penumbral mummer's tale? Contact Upsilon's features are fading, the mist dissipating. We consider that you will be able to judge correctly for yourself. Your people will mourn bitterly should you fail. A big thank you to Shas Lakais for bringing this to my attention on Twitter, and thusly making me wish I had never seen it at all. Because, let's get a few things out of the way. It's very obvious they're speaking about the Necrons and the Silent King. And that's not just because of the fact that, like, be real, it's obvious, but also because that big symbol in the bottom of the page is the symbol for the Mask of the Dreaming Shadow, a Harlequin company that is focused entirely on fighting the Necrons and preventing their awakening, something they have been clearly wildly unsuccessful with given how well the Necrons seem to be doing as of late. It should be noted, though, that the Dreaming Shadow is one of the more human-friendly factions of Eldari and Harlequins. I think that's probably because of the fact that they're not as focused on chaos, and view humanity as probably the best means to combating the Necron threat. However, it is apparently stated that after these moments of camaraderie between the two, there's often a Necron attack shortly to follow, so I guess them showing up is kind of a, hey, we're gonna help you out now so you can deal with this minor threat because you're gearing up for a boss fight, you just don't know it. And interestingly, they also have a long history of attacking Adeptus Mechanicus dig sites, but I think the reason why should be pretty obvious. Back on track though, this is nuts, right? We can agree this is insane. It states in plain English, but as plain as you can for a Harlequin, that he bred horrors of infinite hunger. This is stating that when the Silent King left the galaxy after the Great Sleep, he bred the Tyranids into existence. That would, on the face of it, make sense because they had to come from somewhere, and these don't really feel like normal biological organisms, but still, that's such a dumb idea. Like, why do you need to make the galaxy and the entire universe that small? Why can't you just let the Tyranids be something else? We know there are other galaxies out there in the cosmos, so why lump the Tyranids in with something from this one? And furthermore, it takes one of the things that makes the Silent King so interesting, the fact that he seems like a very reasonable and amiable person to work with, and is willing to cooperate with humanity, and just craters it. This destroys his characterization. So it's not just about the Tyranids. After the war in heaven was over, Szarekh didn't join his people in the Great Sleep, and basically left the galaxy in shame to try and find a way to reverse biotransference, something that he viewed as largely his fault. He is unquestionably the single oldest living being in the known universe. This includes literal gods, so it would make sense that he's a very mellow person. He has a level of perspective that you just could not find anywhere else. He's measured, he's intelligent, and the fact that he is able to look past all the foibles and chaos and fighting of every other faction and even the members of his own race in order to do what ought to be done says a lot about him and shows a lot of weight to the experience he has gained over the years. But having him, just for whatever petty reason, make the Tyranids and unleash them upon the universe just destroys all of that. And you can't even argue that, oh, he did it when he was young, right at the very start of things when he first left, because no, he left because he wanted to find a way to reverse biotransference. And stripping the universe of all biomass with this unstoppable parasitic army will kind of crater your ability to do so. Like, imagine if you actually managed to undo biotransference only for the Tyranids to show up right then. And there's also the fact that for a long time now, a big part of his characterization is the fact that he views the Tyranids as the clear and present threat to the galaxy. So much so that he ended his exile and formed an alliance with Dante of the Blood Angels against the Tyranids after they had come to blows on a planet. Because the Necrons were there to fight the Tyranids, but when the Blood Angels intervened, Szarekh said, look, you've cost us vital forces we needed, there's clearly a bigger problem, let's put everything aside, I've known Sanguinius before, look, I even have a copy of his death mask, let's fight the Tyranids together. And sure, I understand that you can't fully trust him, you know, Xeno, but simply put, he's obviously not outright lying because that's dumb and boring. Ulterior motives and lying are two fully different things, and stories very rarely utilize lying because it just kills any stakes or intrigue, unless of course the point of the story is uncovering that lie, which does not seem to be the case here. And I do know that some Necrons actually do want to strip all biological life from the universe, but those are a very small minority. They belong to something called the Destroyer Cult, and it is generally considered a form of madness. Not as bad as the Flayer virus, but not that different from it, where they will go out of their way to strip all biological life from a planet piece by piece by piece, no matter how long that process takes. And personally, I doubt that Szarekh started losing his mind out there in the cosmos. Someone else might have, but I don't think he did. Now, there is some things I would like to note. The story where Dante and Szarekh meet is called The Word of the Silent King by L.J. Goulding, and it was released in December of 2014. However, this lore update, the one where it is revealed, quote-unquote, that the Silent King created the Tyranids, is from White Dwarf issue number 450, which was released in January of 2020. Now, when looking at lore, I tend to go by something called the 10-year rule, meaning that when a piece of lore is 10 years older or more, you can start questioning its validity and really be a little skeptical about whether or not it's canon, and if you have a newer source, you should default to the newer one. This is why I'm going with these sources, despite the fact that Szarekh was first introduced in the Necron 5th edition Codex, released in 2011. What that establishes is the fact that Szarekh saw what the C'tan had taken away from the Necrons, successfully led a rebellion to destroy them, and then instigated the Great Sleep Protocol after seeing the state the Necrons were in and seeing the inevitable ascendancy of the Eldari. However, he would not join them in the Great Sleep, and would then leave the galaxy on a voyage of penance. This is where that original piece of lore comes from. However, the Codex specifically says penance, not conquest. Penance is a form of self-punishment, and going out to subjugate races and win glory and riches untold outside of the galaxy doesn't really seem penitent to me. Similarly, the lore about that Necron Blood Angel alliance also comes from the Blood Angels 5th edition Codex, so around a similar time period. However, a big chunk of lore for the Silent King would come in the 9th edition Codex, which was released in October of 2020. And this allegedly reaffirmed that his ultimate goal was to find a way to reverse the biotransference. It also introduces the conflict with Imhotep the Stormlord, who generally does not want to be subservient to Szarekh, and also believes that the biotransference was actually a good thing, and that it made the Necrons stronger. This also reaffirms that Szarekh wanted to eliminate the Tyranids because he viewed them as the preeminent threat to the Necron race, because if all the biomass in the universe is gone, how can he undo the biotransference? However, the 9th edition doesn't just exist in a vacuum. So, while 2016 is only 9 years ago, it still should be noted that's pretty damn close. So it does seem like GW may well be trying to retcon the Silent King into being someone who might have just doomed the galaxy. But this also provides a possible conundrum. If both of these are true, then could it be that the Silent King did create the Tyranids for some stupid reason, and now deeply regrets it, and is making alliances with humanity in order to try and sweep his mistake under the rug? A mistake that a rival like, say, Imhotep the Stormlord could exploit to rally support against the Silent King and depose him? That would actually be a very interesting idea, and as such we can be confident that GW won't do it. But there is, however, one more thing, and it's lore about the Silent King that we get from the 10th edition Necron Codex, released in December of 2023, so just shy of 4 years after White Dwarf 450. Because sure, let's just take the lore of a critically important character and throw it in the blender every 5 odd years. I'm sure that's fine. Honestly, this just really drives home how GW cannot get their heads screwed on right about what they want the Necrons to be, and what they want them to do, or what their motivations are. It's so all over the place when you look at the nitty-gritty of it. Are they tolerant of humanity to a degree? Do they despise them? Are we gonna get any clarification about how different dynasties feel about humans in the lore? I guess not. Is the Silent King a good guy or a bad guy or something in between? Who knows? Who cares? Nothing's canon. A little word of advice to GW. If you keep changing the lore of important characters, it gets really hard to get invested in them, because people realize that whatever headcanons or theories they have could end up being incinerated by a monthly magazine article. The offending passage goes thusly. Wars with the Celestant realms beyond the galaxy did Szarekh wage in the third mantle of existence as his people slept soundly, safeguarded from harm by the Silent King's unsleeping wrath. Barbarous empires did he trample in the utter dark. Uncivilized realms of horror and madness did he soothe. Tribute undreamt did he win. Glory and wealth and honor were his. Thus did Szarekh triumph to claim territories beyond the stars, preparing a new inheritance for his people, one to be gifted at the end of all mantles. So I guess in addition to looking for a cure for the biotransference, if he even is at all, he was waging galactic wars of conquest with whatever forces he brought with them, and apparently making himself super famous and rich and powerful, so that the Necrons can apparently just leave the galaxy and start anew with all that he won for them. It continues on. The rupture of the realm Empiric sorely tested the dynasties of his people, and as one did they cry out for succor. Yet Szarekh, in his immortal wisdom, had foreseen all, guided humbly by the Triarch's advice. Was it not Szarekh who redeemed the lost usurpers, the Technomandrites, and released them from their prison? Was it not Szarekh, Scholar King, who had already conceived of the crown of nodal matrices to the eternal realm? Did not the usurpers, grateful and quiescent, eagerly construct the realm-spanning matrix of Sarekh's design? As the fourth mantle of existence dawned and his people began to awake, was Szarekh already amongst them? Though his works and passage they marked not, humble and honest were his deeds, yet had his people known of them, praise and riches would they have showered upon him. The sleep of his people had been troubled by the gnawing of vermin and the last curse of the gods, and Szarekh mourned the loss and the change deeply, for none loved his people more than the Silent King. The purity of the eternal realm is at hand, for the Silent King's crowning design of nodal matrices spread across every heaven. Yet though the Pretender's species' doom is inevitable, still do they tarry in their low existence. They dared taint Sarekh's great gift, for it is a gift of regal purging to all creation. Thus did the Silent King deign to peer closely at the lesser beings' churning lives. If they could not grasp the beneficence of his gift, then magisterial Szarekh solemnly swore to shun them from existence altogether. The celestant realms beyond the stars await still their master and his people, yet only when the final mantles of existence fall away completely will his people truly know the glories Szarekh has wrought for them. So when Szarekh was introduced, and when the Necrons were introduced, the big thing with them was that they wanted to combat the Tyranids. They saw it as an anathema to them, even though they were invulnerable to it. However, we have gone from that, to Szarekh being the creator of the Tyranids, to him seemingly just not caring at all. In the 10th edition codex, there is no mention of the Tyranids. In fact, it says that the thing that brought him back into the galaxy was, of course, chaos, because GW cannot get over their addiction to chaos. I call it chaos creep, because it just keeps creeping into everything. And they really have just made him into another Necron Lord. He doesn't seem that different from the other ones we've seen here and there. The unique thing about him was his reasonability, the fact that he's willing to play ball and listen, but now, not even that. Also, I actually will give GW some credit here. That notion of the Silent King not just floating around in the void, but actively engaging with other civilizations outside the Milky Way, extracting tribute from them, gaining their favor, and crushing, quote, barbarous empires, is really intriguing to me, and I hope they never expand on it. Leave that mystery up in the air, give us little tidbits, let us wonder about it, because that's something 40k needs. It needs a vagueness, it needs a sense of wonder, and I think that idea actually does bring that. And I was actually about to say that I don't like the idea that Szarekh wants the Necrons to just quit the Milky Way galaxy after chaos is defeated, so they can enjoy all that he won for them outside of it. But now that I think about it, maybe it is a good idea. They're already trying to set up Imhotep the Stormlord as Zarekh's main rival, and a lot of Necrons just might not want to leave the galaxy. No, this is the galaxy we were born in, we fought for it, we awoke here, we're gonna claim it no matter what, we are not quitting on it. And Imhotep could lead that faction, while Zarekh's followers could want to defeat Chaos and then leave. You could have them put aside their differences to cooperate against Chaos and the Tyranids, something they could both agree on, but the finer points of what they should do after the fact could be a very interesting sore spot between the two. But again, I really don't like the fact that in the 10th edition codex, all mention of his desire to fight the Tyranids has just been expunged. But first and foremost, I beg you, for the love of God, keep that plot point about him having created the Tyranids in hell where it belongs. The ultimate or penultimate book in the Dawn of Fire series is about the Silent King, so I have my hopes we'll finally get a cohesive storyline and a confirmation of his motivations in that book. provided they actually bring him back properly at all. But all of this flopping around over the past 10 years makes me very uncomfortable as to what direction they'll actually take his character in. But what do you guys think? Do you guys actually like the idea that Szarekh might have made the Tyranids? Do you prefer him as someone who wants to work with humanity to fight off the Tyranids and chaos? Or do you like the idea of him just quitting the galaxy altogether? And where do you think rivals to his power like Imhotep the Stormlord could factor into that? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the comments below. Please subscribe if you have not already done so, and consider supporting me on Patreon. And until then, I will see you in the next video.